They didn't know I was already on the porch. That's the only mercy in it. They thought they still had the door between us. I'd come straight from the surgical center, 2 days after they replaced the joint in my hip, with the discharge papers folded in my purse that said, in plain print, "Do not stay alone the first week." My furnace had quit in the freeze, the pipes already ticking toward bursting, and Daniel, my own son, had said the words I'd waited years to hear without having to beg for them. "Come stay with us, Mom. We'll take care of you." So I came. Slowly, because everything was slow now, one hand on the rail Ray built, my overnight bag dragging at my sore side. And through the door, I heard Vanessa. "Don't let her stay the night, Daniel. Once she's in, she never leaves." I stopped on the top step. And then, lower, the part that did the real damage. "She's not dying. She just wants to be carried. Let Caroline take her, or put her somewhere." That's what those places are for. Put her somewhere, like a chair you've stopped using. And my son said nothing. Not no. Not, "She's my mother." Just the small, wet sound of a man swallowing. I didn't knock. I didn't plead. I'd pleaded my whole life in ways I never once called pleading. I stood there, a moment in the porch light that wasn't lit for me, the heat from their kitchen leaking out under the door and dying in the cold air around my ankles, and I felt something settle in me. Not break, settle. The way a bone finds its place when you've stopped fighting it. Then I picked up my bag, and I turned, and I went back down the steps Ray built, into a cold that was at least honest about being cold, and I drove the 40 minutes home with the car heater roaring and the clearest thought I'd had in years, already taking shape. My own house was 46 degrees when I let myself in. I kept my coat on. I should not have been alone, the papers in my purse said so. But I had nowhere warmer to be, and I'd rather freeze in a house that was mine than thaw in one where I'd just been told to disappear. I set the overnight bag down by the door, still zipped, still packed, the way it would stay for a long while, and I dragged the little space heater out of the hall closet and sat in its small orange glow at my own kitchen table. I didn't cry. The old me would have. The old me would have turned it over all night hunting for the softer version. She was stressed. He was caught off guard. They'd had a long day. I had a whole drawer of those, folded and pressed and ready to lay over any wound. That night, for the first time, I didn't reach for them. I made tea with hands that didn't shake, and I pulled my grocery notebook toward me, the one with the bent spiral and the coffee ring, and I turned to a clean page and wrote one line and underlined it twice. "I am not someone you keep in the cold." I read it until the heater warmed the room. Then I went to bed under 3 quilts and slept better than I had in a year. There's a strange warmth in a decision. It outlasts a furnace. To understand how one sentence through a door could change the whole shape of a life, you have to know the shape it already had. I'm 71. I raised 2 children, mostly alone. In the years Ray drove long haul, then together when he came home for good, then alone again after the heart attack took him 6 years back. Quick and quiet on an ordinary Tuesday morning. My daughter Caroline lives across the country. She calls every Sunday, and we love each other the way you love someone you don't get to hold hard, and a little carefully. And then there's Daniel, my youngest, my boy, the one who used to crawl into my lap during thunderstorms because, he swore, my heartbeat was louder than the sky. I gave Daniel and Vanessa the down payment on that house. $52,000, very nearly everything Ray and I had set aside, handed over with a card that said, "Just to help you get started." I told myself it was what mothers do. I co-signed his first car. I kept their children 3 days a week for years, so Vanessa could go back to work, and then weekends too. Right up until the day she decided the kids were old enough not to need a sitter, which fell, conveniently. In the same season, she decided I was old enough to need watching myself. That's the way it always goes. It never arrives all at once. They don't take your life in one motion. They take it the way water takes a stone, patiently, politely, until you reach one day for who you used to be, and find yourself worn smooth and small. The last few holidays they'd seated me at the end of the table by the kitchen door, in the draft, so I'd be close to help with the dishes. And when I'd mentioned, months ago, that I might need this very hip procedure, Vanessa's first question, her first wasn't whether it hurt or who would drive me. It was whether I'd thought about what happens to the house if something goes wrong. Always, beneath the soft words, the same low arithmetic. What is she still worth to us, and how do we keep it from slipping somewhere else? And Daniel let it happen. That was the part I sat with longest, those first cold nights. Not Vanessa. Vanessa was only ever doing openly what Vanessa did. But Daniel, who knew better, who was raised better, had simply learned that the easiest thing in the world is to look at your phone while your mother is moved an inch further from the center of your life each year. He never pushed me out. He just never once reached out to pull me back. And on a freezing night in October, with his mother 2 days out of surgery and bleeding warmth onto his porch, his silence finished his wife's sentence for her. I wasn't bitter. I need you to believe that, because bitter is what they expect, and bitter is what lets them off the hook. I wasn't bitter. I was tired. There's a whole world of difference between the two. Bitter wants an apology. Tired only wants to put the thing down. The next morning I woke before the sun, as my body has always insisted, and I made coffee in the small pot, 1 cup, and I did something I hadn't done in years. I went to the closet in the spare room and pulled out the file box Ray had labelled, in his blocky hand, important. And I sat on the floor with my bad hip propped on a pillow and went through every folder, the deed, the bank statements, the old will Ray and I had drawn up, dividing everything neat and equal between Daniel and Caroline, the records of the down payment, receipt after receipt of a life spent quietly subsidizing other people's comfort. I made 2 lists by hand. In one, everything I had given. In the other, everything I had ever been given back. The first list ran past 4 pages. The second fit on the back of a grocery receipt. I'm not telling you that for pity. I'm telling you because seeing it written did what years of merely feeling it never could. A feeling you can talk yourself out of. A number you cannot. 15 years of one-way love, totaled in my own handwriting, and not one line of it had ever been a loan. It had all been a gift. Which meant I would learn this soon, and it would nearly stop me that I couldn't claw a single dollar of it back. But it also meant I could decide, down to the penny, that not $1 more would ever travel in that direction again. I picked up the phone and called the only person in that family who still called me just to talk, Hannah. Daniel and Vanessa's oldest, 17, with her father's stubborn cowlick and none of her mother's polish. She answered on the second ring. "Grandma, are you okay? Dad said your heater broke and then you never came, and Mom said you'd changed your mind, and I—" She stopped. "Did you change your mind?" "No, sweetheart," I said. "I didn't change my mind. I heard something I needed to hear. I didn't tell her what. A grandmother doesn't lay that on a child." But Hannah was quiet a moment, and then, in a small, careful voice, "She didn't want you to stay, did she?" Not a question. The girl already knew the shape of her own house better than her father did. "It's all right, baby," I said. "I'm warm. I'm fine. Come Saturday, I'll make the cinnamon rolls." She said yes before I finished asking. I hung up and looked at the overnight bag, still sitting zipped by the door, and I thought, I have had power this whole time. I just left it in a box for 6 years. Then I called a woman named Diane Holloway. Diane is an estate attorney 3 towns over, sharp as a tack and twice as fast, who had settled Ray's affairs without ever once speaking to me as if I were breakable. When her office picked up, I said I needed to come in about my will, my accounts, and my house. The receptionist asked, kindly, whether everything was all right. "Everything," I said. is finally going to be. But the bank came first. That Monday, I dressed for its slacks, the good blue sweater, the silver earrings Ray gave me for our 40th. Because when you're about to change the shape of your life, you wear something with buttons. I drove myself, in daylight. The very thing they'd been telling me for years I couldn't do, and I parked between the lines and walked in tall, hip and all. A young man named Marcus showed me into a glass-walled office and asked how he could help. "I'd like to review every account with my name on it," I said. He pulled them up, and there, on the joint checking, I'd added Daniel to, for emergencies, 3 years back, was a recurring transfer. I had never set up $150 a month, going out for nearly 2 years to an account I didn't recognize. "Do you recognize this, Mrs. Brandt?" Marcus asked. The number on the screen blurred and then went very sharp. "No," I said, "I don't. It wasn't the money. $150 was nothing. It was the discovery that somewhere along the line, the door between helping them and them helping themselves had been quietly taken off its hinges, and I'd been too trusting to hear it fall." "Remove the authorized user," I said. "Cancel that transfer. Reissue the cards in my name only. New login, new security questions, and lock the account so nothing changes without me sitting in this chair." Marcus's eyebrows lifted, just slightly. To his great credit, he didn't ask why. He only said, "Of course," and began to type. It wasn't revenge, it was clarity. They feel different in the hand. Revenge runs hot. Clarity is cool and clean, like the far side of the pillow. I thought the rest would be that simple. It was not. This is the part I almost left out, and the part you most need, because the easy version is a lie. When I sat across from Diane Holloway that Tuesday, with my 4 pages of giving, the first thing I wanted was the $52,000 back, the down payment, the keystone. I slid the records across the desk. "I want to recover this," I said. Diane read every line, set it down, and looked at me with something that wasn't pity, which I was grateful for. "Eleanor, I have to be straight with you. There's no note, no agreement, no repayment terms. The card says gift. Legally, that money is gone. I can't get it back, and anyone who tells you they can is taking your money too." And there it was. The old smallness came creeping up out of the floor the way it always had. "You see, you have no power after all. You gave it away, all of it, the way you've given everything away your whole life." And underneath that, the worst thought, the one that had kept me obedient for 15 years. Daniel is still your son. Hannah is still trapped in that house with that woman. If you do this, if you really do it, you'll lose them both for good, and you'll have done it to yourself. I sat there in that office and felt my hand drift toward my purse, toward the door, toward laying the good linen back over the wound one more time, the way I always had. "I want you to know how close I came, very close." But Diane wasn't finished. "You can't get back what you gave in love," she said. "But you can make absolutely certain no one ever takes anything from you again that you haven't chosen to give. The house still yours. The savings, the accounts, your estate, every bit of it is still yours to direct. The question isn't whether you can punish the past, Eleanor. You can't. The question is who's going to be in charge of your future." And something in me that had been bent for 15 years stood slowly back up. She was right. I could not undo what I'd handed over in fear of being unloved, but I would never hand anything over in that fear again. So we worked, and we did not rush, and I made her show me every page. The first day was the power of attorney. When my hip first frightened me the year before, I'd signed one naming Daniel the right to speak for me, to act for me, to decide for me, if I couldn't decide for myself. I'd believed it was love. I understood now it was a leash, and I'd pressed the end of it into his hand myself. Diane laid the revocation in front of me, and I read it twice and signed it, and the pen did not shake. and she pressed her notary seal into the paper with a small, firm sound that I felt in my chest like a lock turning. When it was done, she said, simply, "No one holds your voice now but you." I had not known until that moment how heavy a thing it is to have given your voice away, because you only feel the weight when you finally set it down. The second day was the will, and that one I felt. Diane read me the old language to my children, Daniel and Caroline, in equal shares and asked what I wanted to change. I kept Caroline. She had never once made me feel like a debt to be managed. But Daniel I removed, and in the blank where his name had been, I put Hannah. The pen got heavy there. I sat with it a moment. Because removing your own child from your will is not a thing you do lightly, even when he has earned it, even when you are sure. I thought of the boy in the thunderstorm. Then I thought of the man on the porch who said nothing, and I signed. We built a living trust to hold the house, and the savings, me as trustee, for as long as I live. Hannah as the beneficiary, with funds she could draw for school and emergencies, and the kind of start in life I'd once given her father, who repaid it with a closed door. And we drew up a new medical directive, Caroline first and Hannah second, the only two people left who I trusted to ask what I wanted instead of what was easiest. In between those cold, clean tasks, the warm thing grew. Hannah came that first Saturday, and the next, and the one after. And a Saturday became a standing thing between us. Flour on the counter, the kitchen fogged with sweetness, the radio low. She told me the family from the inside, things I'd half known and never let myself see. How her mother had been laying the groundwork for a year, calling me confused and difficult and not safe alone. Planting the words like seeds for a harvest she meant to bring in later. "She's been building the story, Grandma," Hannah said one afternoon, tired in a way no 17-year-old should be. "So that when she finally pushed you out, everyone would already believe it was for your own good." And then there was a third thing, slower than the rest, something I'd thought long dead. Hunting for a stamp one evening, I opened the bottom drawer of Ray's old desk and found my watercolours. The tin box, the brushes gone stiff, a pad of paper yellowed at the edges. I'd painted once, before the children, before the long decades of being needed, the sea mostly. Ray and I always said we'd take a month someday and follow the coast and paint our way down it, and someday never came. And then he was gone. And there, tucked beneath the paint tin, was a folded half sheet in his blocky hand, soft from years that I had never seen. "Ellie," it read, "if you're reading this, I worried more than I ever said out loud. I kept the house in your name only, clean and clear, whatever anybody tells you later. It's yours. You spent your life taking care of everybody. Make sure somebody takes care of you, even if it has to be you. Live with your hands open, not your fists, and go see the ocean. I sat on the floor of that spare room and held the paper to my chest. He'd worried. He had never once said the word, but he'd quietly made certain that the one thing they could never take the roof had been mine alone the entire time. The man had been guarding me for 6 years from the grave, and I'd been too busy being useful to notice. Then, one Saturday, Hannah didn't come. No knock, no text. The cinnamon rolls cooled on the counter, and I told myself she'd overslept. Told myself a dozen harmless things. And underneath all of them sat the cold certainty that Vanessa had found out. 2 days of silence. 3. I did not call the house. I would not put the girl in the position of choosing between a ringing phone and her mother in the next room. On the 4th night, near 9 o'clock, there was a knock, soft, uncertain, low on the door, and when I opened it, Hannah stood on my step, in the cold without a coat. Her eyes red. Her jaw set in a way I recognized because it was mine. "She took my phone," Hannah said. "She read everything. She said, 'You're manipulating me.' She said, 'If I came here again, I was choosing you over my own family, and that I'd regret it.'" Her voice shook. but she did not look away. I told her I wasn't choosing you over them. I told her I was choosing the person who actually showed up. She had walked the last mile and a half because the buses had stopped. I'm not going to pretend I don't see it, Grandma. I'm not going to grow up into someone who pretends. I pulled her inside out of the cold. That cold. The cold I'd stood in on a porch, and I held her while she cried. And I understood, with a clarity that ached, that this was what all of it had been for. Not the money. Not the reckoning. This. A girl standing in the cold by choice, refusing to learn the family lesson. She slept in my spare room that night, in a bed no one would ever tell her she couldn't have. And in the morning I made her eggs and drove her to school myself, in daylight. The thing I'm not supposed to be able to do. The reckoning came the way I'd planned it after everything was already done. That was the whole point. Diane had warned me the family would receive formal notice once the trust filed and the will changed, and she'd asked if I wanted to tell them first. No, I'd said. Let the paper speak. I've explained myself enough for one lifetime. So I did not call, I did not warn them. I let the documents go out into the world, and I painted a little each evening, and I waited for them to learn it the way the rest of us learn things, by opening the mail. Vanessa came first. Of course she did. She rang the bell twice, sharp, and was already talking when I opened the door. Eleanor, this has gone completely out of hand. You've revoked Daniel's power of attorney. You've changed your will. You've got Hannah sneaking out at all hours. I stepped back and let her in, because there was nothing left to hide and nowhere left she could push me. She stood in the center of my living room, the way she always stood, as though the walls owed her something. You can't cut us out over a misunderstanding. There was no misunderstanding, I said, and my voice was perfectly calm. I'd had it ready for weeks. I stood on your porch 2 days out of surgery, in the freeze, and I heard you say I wasn't dying. I just wanted to be carried, and that someone should put me somewhere. I heard my son say nothing at all. There is nothing in that to misunderstand. It was the clearest thing I've heard in years. Her jaw tightened. You were never going to be left out in the cold. You're being dramatic. I'm being exact, I said. And I watched her understand that the woman she'd spent 15 years sanding down to a smooth and silent nub was not in the room anymore. She tried another door. And now you've turned my own daughter against me. She's a child, Eleanor. She doesn't know the first thing about money, and I've made her the one person in your house, I said, who asked whether I was warm. That stopped her. And then, for just a moment, one moment, the performance fell away, and I saw what was underneath it. Not malice. Fear. The wide, grasping fear of a woman who'd decided somewhere long ago that love was a thing that ran out, that there would never be enough to go around, that you had to seize your share early and hold it with both fists, or be left with nothing. Her eyes went to the papers on my side table, and I watched the panic move behind them, raw and almost young. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. Because I knew that fear. I'd spent 15 years feeding it, hoping it would soften into something else. It never does. You cannot fill a hole that someone has dug on purpose, and you go broke trying. You'll regret this, she said, gathering her coat around her like armor. No, I said, and I opened the door for her. I'll regret the 15 years I didn't. This part, I'll sleep just fine. Daniel came that evening. He didn't ring. He sat in his car at the curb. A long while, first I watched him through the glass, the way I'd once watched for his school bus, and then came up the walk slowly. Like a boy who knows he's in trouble and can't remember the crime, I let him in. He looked older than I'd remembered, or maybe I'd just stopped seeing him clearly somewhere along the road. Mom, I got the papers. The trust. The will. I don't understand. After everything. I agreed. Yes, exactly that, he flinched. You're doing all this over one night? One thing Vanessa said when she was stressed? Here is where the old me would have melted, would have reached for him, would have said, "Oh, honey, no, of course not. Sit down. Let me explain." I didn't. "Daniel," I said gently. The porch was the last page, not the book. The book was every holiday you put me in the draft, every birthday that came as a gift card at bedtime. Every time someone in your house decided what I could and couldn't do, and you found something fascinating on your phone. I gave you the roof you sleep under, and you couldn't give me a couch for one cold night when I came home from the hospital. His eyes filled. "We're still family." "No, Daniel," I said, and I said it with no heat at all, which is how I knew I meant it. "I was your family. You stopped being mine a long time ago, one small silence at a time. I'm not punishing you. I'm just done buying a ticket into a house I built." He sat with that. To his credit, he didn't make it about money the way Vanessa had. He only said, after a long quiet, "I don't know how to fix it." "You can't," I said, not unkindly. "Not the way you mean. But you could start telling the truth in your own house. For Hannah's sake, if not for mine." Then I walked him to the door and I didn't slam it. I closed it. Softly. The softest thing in the world is a door you've finally stopped guarding. After it shut, I went to the hall and took down the photograph that had hung there 30 years. Daniel at 8, gap-toothed, asleep against my shoulder in a thunderstorm, certain my heartbeat was louder than the sky. I held it a long while. Then I turned it face down on the table. Not in anger, in mourning. Because the boy in that picture was real, and he was gone. And gone deserves to be grieved, even when it goes on walking around inside a grown man. I made Ray's lentil soup that night and let the steam fog my glasses until I couldn't tell what was steam and what wasn't, and I decided not to find out. The weeks after were quiet, and the quiet was the whole gift. The phone rang less once they understood there was nothing left to manage. Caroline called from across the country and cried and said, "Mom, I'm so proud of you. And I'm so sorry it took this." And I told her the truth that I wasn't sorry anymore. Hannah kept coming, openly now, and one Saturday she put her head down in the flour and cried when I told her the trust would carry her all the way through school, and I rubbed her back the way I had when she was small. I sold the cold house in the spring, the one Ray had quietly kept clean and clear in my name, all along to a young couple expecting their first child, and I stood in the empty rooms one last time and thanked the walls and let it go. With part of what it brought, I bought a small, bright apartment near the water, ground floor, east-facing, where the morning light pours in like something poured on purpose. And the overnight bag, the one I'd carried up Daniel's steps and carried back down again, the one that had sat zipped by my door so long, it became a kind of headstone. I finally unpacked it, and then I packed it again, with my own things, for my own reasons. Because that summer, I did the one thing Ray told me to do in a note I found too late and right on time. I followed the coast. Town by town, with my stiff brushes soaked back to life, eating dinner alone at little windows and never once feeling lonely, because there is all the difference in the world between being alone and being unwanted. And I finally knew which one I was. I sent Hannah a postcard from every town. On one, in front of an ocean, Ray and I never got to see together. I wrote, "Wish you were here. And someday you will be." So here is what I want to say to you, whoever you are, watching this in a house where you've started to feel like a guest. If you have ever stood at a door you helped pay for and heard them decide you weren't worth the trouble, listen, because I'm on the far side of it now, and I can see clearly. You do not have to plead. You do not have to earn a seat at a table you set yourself. You do not have to keep choosing the cage you know over the cold you don't. You are allowed to turn around. You are allowed to drive home to your cold house and your clean page and write one true line and underline it and mean it. You are allowed to pack your own bag and carry it somewhere that wants you, Even if, at the start, the only one who wants you is you, that is enough to begin. It was enough for me. No one decides where I lay my head anymore. Not my son, not his wife, not the slow, polite years that taught me to make myself small. I sleep where I choose now, under my own roof, by my own water, and the door is mine to open, and it opens every Saturday for the girl who knocked when no one else would. If this story found you tonight, share it with another woman who needs to hear it. Tell me in the comments, when did you finally stop pleading and turn back with a plan? And carry this with you like a key in your coat, because someone needs it. Calm isn't weakness. Calm is the sound a woman makes when she's finally finished asking.